To convene, to bring people together, to talk about important issues. And as we were organizing this year's conference, we thought that it'd be most appropriate, given the subject of landowners and stewardship and working with farmers and operators, that we ended the day with some panels that would focus on that. And so this is the landowner panel, and we have 4 landowners. You can see their names, and you see their bio information in your packet. But I'm going to introduce each of them and ask them to spend a few minutes talking about their farm operation and their farms and their work and stewardship. And that's going to leave a good block of time for us for questions. And so you'll be thinking about either your questions or the stories that you may want to share as well. I think we'll go ahead and take them in the order that they're listed in the program, and they're almost seated at the table. So Jack, do you want to begin our discussion?
Okay, we'll start off.
And let's see if your mic's working. Well, I think so.
Sounds like it.
Great.
Okay, we have some cues here and what they would like to have us cover. And Neil, if I get off too far, well, you can just
pass that down.
no problem.
I didn't see it either, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. But go ahead.
To start with, to describe our farm property, not to be too specific, but we have several farms scattered along a line on either side of the line from just south of Fort Dodge down through Osceola into Decatur County. So we have ground that ranges all the way in CSR2 value from high 80s to down to below 50. So some of the things that have been talked about here today really apply to us in terms of VRT application and so on. The type of leasing arrangements we use are varied. We have 3 of them. We use the old 50-50 crop share, which in my opinion is outdated in most cases, but we think it serves its purpose pretty well in a couple of situations where we have a long-term lease with beginning farmers. That's a wonderful program for young farmers trying to start out, and it's pretty rewarding. I'd encourage anybody who has an opportunity to try to help a young farmer start out. We also have 75-25 crop shares, where we as the landowner provide 100% of the crop inputs except for the application farming operations. And then we get 75% of the crop, and that's worked very well for both us and the tenants. It worked really well for the tenants in the high price crop years. And then we have some where we have cash rent, but a flex cash rent, and it's quite different than what Mark, for all of those you heard Mark again, I don't see Mark, explaining their operation. We use a different rent, and it's based on the integrity, which I'll come back to, of the farmer. And at the end of the crop year, he goes through his numbers, and he verifies all of them. We have 3 different people we work on this with. We trust them completely to give us the right numbers, but they're verifiable by the elevator and receipts if we would choose to check them. And then at the end of the year, the way the lease is written, either that person owes us a bonus, or he doesn't owe all of his second half cash rent if he's had a bad year. I think if we should get a bonus in the good years, they should get a break in the bad years, and it's really worked well for a win-win situation with the tenants. The third thing they'd like us to talk about is what goals do you have for your property, and I'm going to defer that till later because I think it will come up. What do you look for in your tenant operator? And I have 10 things listed. Number 1, integrity. Number 2, integrity. Number 3, integrity. Somewhat like real estate and location. And then the next 5 have to do with just good crop production. And I think timely operations is something that's very critical there. A lot of people techniques, optimum fertility, top weed control, good disease and insect control, and one could go on and on there. I also have stewardship of the land, very important, and I think something that's widely underrated that's extremely important is we look for a good communicator, and that's been touched upon several times today. What government subsidized programs have you utilized? We've utilized several of them. Of course, we use crop insurance, conservation reserve program. That's we've put about 300 acres in the conservation reserve program. When you get into southern Iowa, and some of the ground that needs to be put in, that's been a very good thing, and it helps the wildlife. It just helps all the way around, improves the quality of the soil long term, and preserves it better. We've done quite a lot of tiling. We've pattern tiled 400 acres and patterned and tiled another 460 on top of that. One of those places was the Rathbun Lake project, which was well subsidized, and it's made that water a lot cleaner down there for us fishermen. I'm looking for dirt, Greg. Greg and I fished down in southern Iowa recently on Will River, and it's amazing how much that area has been improved by farmers doing more tiling and terracing and so on. And then, of course, we participate in the agricultural risk coverage county level in the current farm program. What's the most important factor for improved landlord relations? As I mentioned earlier, it's integrity, but trust. You have to have someone you can trust both ways. You have to trust them, they have to trust you, and then I'm going to also add the communication. What improvements have we made? I just described the tiling that we've done. We've added a number of terraces and a number of waterways. We've torn out I don't know how many fence rows, several miles of fence rows with trees in them, and that's been an improvement. We've ruined a few people's cash crop farming up in northern Iowa with some of the weeds we've taken out. And is Mark's last name? Yeah. See? There he is. Mark, that farm down by the gas plant south of Osceola that you sold me, you made a good deal for the owners on that. You did your job well. As I drove over after we bought it, I found more ditches than I thought. We have 115 acres down there that has 46 tile intakes. The neighbors are very happy that the dirt's not washing down on them now. I think that pretty well covers the CRP and the tiling and the terracing and so on. I think I'm going to pass on the rest of them because I know I'm about out of time and see how the questions come up.
We'll load some time for questions. Thank you, Jack. And now we'll hear from Carol. Carol Reichardt.
Yeah, hi, my name's Carol, and I am a fifth-generation Iowan. Was not raised on a farm, grew up in Des Moines, still live in Des Moines, haven't strayed very far. But like most landowners, I am a landowner with my sibling, my two sisters, my mother, and our husbands and our children. Most Iowans that own land or farmland have a story behind it, and I do as well. And my grandfather and father were in the limestone business, the calcium business, and the feed business originally. And so they acquired land around the state for different reasons for business, but they also were just passionate about rural Iowa. They were passionate about cattle, especially Herefords for some reason. I think they like the white heads, I don't know. But over the years, my dad had bought some property, and he did a great job managing them hands-on throughout his life. We had the luxury of being able to enjoy the farms. My sisters, our husbands, and our children going out camping, fishing, hiking, horseback riding, doing all the wonderful things that we treasure. They instilled a really strong conservation ethic in all of us. And when my father unexpectedly passed away 12 years ago, all of a sudden we were left with the management and responsibility to take care of these assets and the natural resources that they encompassed. So after my father passed away, my siblings all live here as well, so we all met regularly to discuss the management and all the different issues that surrounded them, tried to kind of figure out what our goals would be, what our philosophy might be, how we move forward, how we think about it moving forward. And so we decided we needed to come up with a mission statement. So I have to read it because I don't always remember it, but I know the core of it. But it is to restore, enhance, and protect the natural resources of our farms within a sustainable economic model. So it helps guide a lot of the decisions that we make, or all the decisions that we make. And we have a lot of discussions during the years after, and continue to have when we get together. We talk about soil conservation, soil health, water quality, grass species diversification, how can we do better renovation on our pasture ground, and also how can we be as organic as possible considering the human health and wildlife implications that come along with that. We also understand and put in there the sound economic practices and viability for the farms, so we can continue to maintain them in the way we want them to, and also bring in revenue to the rest of the family. So about 8 years ago, my siblings decided to crown me as Farm Girl. I'm always called Farm Girl. And I think it was partially because they were really busy and they knew that I had a passion for natural resources and conservation and land stewardship. I've been fortunate enough to be on the board of the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation for over 20 years, and with Neil and others in this room, and it has been one of my life's biggest privileges. I've learned a lot through that experience. I've been able to meet a lot of amazing landowners across the state that have worked really hard to protect their land and enhance their natural resources as well. So it helps inspire me every day. It's helped give me the courage when I don't know which step to take next on which farm. It was a little overwhelming having these farms because they're all different. We have actually 8 farms, but 7 that I see regularly. One that's I've seen twice, that's a tiny little thing down by Fairfield, Iowa. But some are up in north central Iowa. We have 2 crop farms up there in Saragordo County, and we have a row crop farm in Ankeny, and one in that we are transitioning currently out of row crop into pollinator, prairie, an organic aronia operation just south of Des Moines. And then we have 3 farms that are in the southern part of our inventory, I guess. So we have 3 farms, one in Osceola, one in Decatur County, and then one in Mercer, Missouri, which is just across the border in northern Missouri. They all still have active limestone quarries on them, so that's a little bit different dynamic to get your head around. Some of the pasture ground has also been reclaimed quarry, and there is some crop ground on that as well. But primarily those 3 farms are cattle operations. There's about 2,000 acres combined down there. So as I was trying to move forward with management and figuring out the future too, I suggested to my family that we hire People's Farm Management Company, and my 2 farm managers are back standing against the wall back there, Molly and Kyle, and they've been amazing to work with. They have helped us work with our tenants to find common ground and address the goals that we have set related to both productivity and preservation on our farms, and we continue to value their assistance a lot. I've also made it a point to try at least some of the areas, I haven't made it with all of them, but to try and get to know the local NRCS officers and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service individuals, and enlist them in helping us come up with some different strategies that we can use on different farms to enhance the natural resources that we have. I also, a couple years ago, hired a short-term project-based appraised consultant by the name of Ron Dutch with Solutions in the Land out of Illinois. And he does a whole systems farm approach. I'm always one that likes to brainstorm and think outside the box and utilize as many resources as I can find, and had run across Ron, and so we kind of did a deep dive into our Osceola cattle operation to try and enhance the natural resources there, and so that's been helpful as well. So some of the conservation practices that we've implemented on our farms include cover crops, woodland management. We've thinned some of the woodland, we've burned woodland, we've added both pollinator and other CRP programs to some of the farms, buffer strips, and then transitioning to intensive rotational grazing at the farm in Osceola. We've also came up with a creative dam erosion issue pilot program in combination with the NRCS office. So we had a whole group of us just down there trying to brainstorm on some erosion issues that we had on the back side of a dam. So we had our farmer out there, and we just kind of came up with something that they hadn't tried before. So the NRCS kind of helped us move forward with that. They use it as a pilot program and visitation site for some other individuals. As you can imagine, we've had 10 different tenants that I deal with over the years, and they're all different. And we've had different challenges, and some have just been over the top amazing. Others have been a little bit more difficult. I would say persistence, patience, communication is the key. Like you said, communication, integrity, trust. There's only been really one that we had to let go, and other ones have moved out of the state or for whatever reason. One of the things that Peoples really helped a lot with Peoples Farm Management was when we lost our farmer up in the Clear Lake area. He was a great tenant. He was a great person. He was progressive. He was really easy to work with. And when he left, I said, I want to find somebody that has a like-minded philosophy. I want conservation practices as much as we can push. I want to push them beyond maybe what their comfort level is, and how do we find that person? So Molly helped me and we put together an RFP, a request for proposal, that went out, and we have found, and I actually for the first time met him. He's been there for a year and a half, but I met him earlier this week for the first time. I'm embarrassed to say, but he was incredible, and I think we have him talking to even maybe trying to introduce a small grading into his rotation, and he's been great to work with.
Great. Well, thank you, Carol. And next we're going to hear from Kenneth Speck. Kenneth?
Yes, well, first of all, I'd like to say greetings from the great state of Illinois. Since Mark seemed to want someone from Illinois on the panel, I guess I was the suspect. And it's land of Lincoln, of course, and we certainly could use a dose of Lincoln right now in our politics. And both state and national, and I guess, it's just, it's a great state. We now have a budget after 3 years, and of course our governor vetoed it, and then it was overridden by the so, a lot of things, when Mark asked me to do this, I keep thinking back, well, where do I go with this? And given my age here, I certainly qualify as being back in the day. This is a kind of a catchphrase now people use. Back in the day, things were supposed to be so much better. Well, I grew up on a 320-acre grain of rice farm with my father. So he was kind of a gritty guy, too. He bought this farm in 1938. And I guess we all know what was going on at that time. We got a madman running loose in Europe. And, it was a time when it was just difficult. But he managed to do it. So that's where I grew up, and it was a life that, when looking back on it, ration books. Possibly some of you guys know what that means. because of the war. Non-pasteurized milk. My gosh, how can we live? We drink non-pasteurized milk. One-room schoolhouse. Attended a one-room schoolhouse. Entertainment. It's funny because there wasn't a little 4-inch screen we carried around with us. It was getting home from school and turning on the Philco radio and listen to Sky King and the Green Hornet and the Bickersons. And so, you know, it's as we got into the 50s, we could see the winds of change were blowing. You know, we've seen bigger machinery, and seed was better. And we even stopped planting corn with a wire. Now, if you don't know what that means, I'd be glad to explain it later. Because it was quite a trick, and my dad was an expert at it. And I tried it one year, and I said, that's not for me. Because the object of that, I guess, was that you could plant 40-inch rows this way, you could plant 40-inch rows this way, you could cross it with a cultivator or plant it the long way with a cultivator, which is something that's unheard of today. Probably cultivators are pretty much unheard of today, I guess. So. But anyway, we got into the late 50s, and in 1960, I met this country gal, and we were married, and we've been married now for 57 years. And we managed to do that, I guess, without any help from Dr. Phil. So, you know, we've come a long way, but that's when our journey really began. And we started buying land in 1968, and that went forward for 5 decades. It would take up more time than we have here today to talk about how that was handled. And if you've ever had the opportunity to buy a farm without ever having money for a down payment, I'm probably the only person in the room that's ever been able to do that. And we had a banker that was unbelievable. The man, when you get people like that that give you good advice, I don't care whether you're starting a business, buying a farm, this guy was terrific at anything you could ask him to do. Got to be great friends with him. He's still alive. He's 96 years old, living in Arizona. And I think if I called him today, I'd get the same good advice I got 50 years ago. So we retired in 2000, and then, you know, we were still in the land biz. Bought the last farm in 2002, and I was told at that time that was the end of our land buying, and I always have a pat answer for that. Absolutely. Maybe. We never know when the next piece of ground is going to come up that might be interesting. So, but anyway, we went along for a few years. Of course, we moved out of state, and when you're 1,000, 1,200 miles away from your farm, it becomes rather difficult because we've seen technology just explode in the early 2000s on through the present day, whether it's machinery or the technology that we've sat here all day and looked at some of this technology that's been applied, and it's just unbelievable. And my only hope that I can live another 50 years and just see the next round of what technology is going to bring into this occupation. I think it's just, we probably can't even imagine what it might be. So I guess in 2000, we decided we needed help. And that's when we decided that because of the technology and of course, land prices had changed so drastically, and there was always a big question about rents, up, down, is it too much, not enough? And so that's when we partnered with Farmland Stewardship Solutions and with Mark Gannon and Greg Townsend and Andy Mullen, and we got together and they worked out a lease agreement that we have yet today that seems to be working not only for us, because it's got to work for everybody, but also for those that are operators. Now, we've had the same operators on our farms for 17 years now. And we treat these people like family because, you know, it's important, just as the other speakers have said, that you have to trust the people you're dealing with. I guess there's one big advantage I probably had that maybe, say an investor buying a farm may not have. I farmed this ground. When they call me up and say, you know, we got a tile broke over here, and I know exactly where that tile is. So that's what makes our working relationship so much better than just being an outsider renting out a farm. And I think that's important, and trust is a big thing in this business. There are so many scams around today and other forms of business that, and internet is deadly. And so we really feel good about the working relationship we have with our tenants. And I guess, you know, beyond that, we have 853 acres of farm ground now between my wife and I. And it's provided us with a good retirement. And we can, you know, hopefully look forward to that. We'll continue. And what are we trying to do with this land? Well, we want to preserve it, of course. And for our family, our children, we have a son and a daughter, and 6 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. None of them are on the farm, but they're interested at least, and we hope that they can continue this. I guess when they have that opportunity to own this land, then it will be up to them to decide. But we are trying to preserve this land. It's a kind of a thing about, you know, you can have your name on a title and land. I don't care whether you got 1,000 acres or 5 acres. You really don't own it. We're only here to preserve it for the generations to come. And I think if we keep that in mind, we get a little better perspective on what this farming business is about. Because if we don't protect it, no one will. And we hope that we can pass it on and still have it preserved for future generations. So I guess that's about all I have to say.
Well, that's plenty. And we'll have the opportunity for you to have some questions too. Thank you, Charles. And next we'll go with Inez Smith.
Hi, all. I come from a much smaller farming operation than my cohorts here. I was born to the farm. I grew up on the farm. It's in northern Iowa in Kasuth County, 9 miles south of the Minnesota border, north of Algona. I went to church at Lakota, went to school at Ledyard, graduated out of a class of 12, 3 boys. So it's a small community, small farm, small things, but big in our hearts. Dad was diversified in that we had dairy, we milked cows, had the bulk tank, and the cows would come in with their names into their stanchions. And Dad would, with my brothers, I had 2 brothers and a sister, and they'd haul the manure out on a plank out the back door of the barn, and then when it got hard enough in the spring, or you know, you could get it loaded up on the manure spreader. It's kind of fun to see the charts where it's really fertile around those areas where Dad would haul the manure. We had chickens and geese and sheep and just the regular little farm. Anyway, it's 160 acres on the home place, and then we had another 80 acres. It's a land grant farm. Grandpa Smith had his first wife pass away, and so part of that 80 acres was the first cemetery, and he donated it to the city of Lakota. I mean, that's a while back when they didn't even have cemeteries established yet in that area. And you go out and you walk the fields, you're either baling hay, or you're picking up rocks, or you're walking the beans. So that farm has become dear to me, and like he just said, you know every inch of that farm. You've walked it. I took lunch out to Dad. I walked across the plowed fields. And in 1963, I was about 8 years old. My aunt passed away, and not being a grandparent, she was had been married but no children, and she willed that farm to Dad because we had been renting it. And the relief that came over Mom and Dad when they found out that they got the farm was huge. I still remember it. Anyway, the love of that land, even though it's little. But anyway, the things change. 1998, lost both mom and dad, and I had to learn how to take care of that farm. My one brother was gone, and the other brother wasn't mentally able to take care of it. So Dad had said keep the renter. So for years I kept that renter. But if the renter doesn't respect you, he saw me as the little girl growing up, what does she know? And she doesn't live there anymore. Things kind of fell apart there a little bit. And I trusted Dad in that he got a trust set up with one of the banks up there and relied on that bank person to be the farm manager, not knowing that that's not their job. You know, I'm thrust into this position of not knowing what to do, when, where, how and why. So all of a sudden someone said to me, well, they're not your farm manager. You can't have them do all that work. So I started looking for a farm manager and hired one, and they don't come look at your farm. They're vacant. They don't show up. And I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I kept asking questions because I didn't know things. And that farm manager, who isn't my farm manager anymore, said, I'm not hired to babysit you. And
Or to be your farm manager.
so, I'm not, yeah. So you learn along the way what's good and what's not good. And I was reading in the paper this itty bitty tiny ad, and it had landowners meeting, and that's how I came to go to Mark Gannon's meeting in Ames. And here he's got this PowerPoint projection and all the charts he had. And all of a sudden I realized all the stuff I don't know. Wow. You know, it was eye-opening for me. And so we talked. And I first hired them to just do the lease, because I'll be the first one to admit, I'd like a show of hands. Who hates talking to the tenant and having to deal with that negotiation? I don't like that. It's not me. They'd say I want a raise, and I would go or want to pay less. That's a raise to them. And I wouldn't know what to say because I didn't have that information of why they needed it or why we should raise rent or lower it, or lost. I was lost. And so I first hired Mark Gannon to help me with that. What to do with just handling the lease part of it. And government programs changed, and the more information I found out, the more you find out you know, the more you find out what you don't know. And I realized I couldn't keep on top of things. I live in Ames, and the farm is clear up north. So after a while, I hired him for taking care of all the land. And the relationship that we've established has been wonderful. We're now looking into cover crops. That's a funny story too. Greg talked to me about doing that. And I hang my head. I've had my bumps along the way where it's like, duh. And he talked to me about it, and I didn't, apparently it went over my head in one ear and out the other, or maybe all I heard was the cost to me. And then I heard Stan talk about it, and it was like, oh, it made sense. He had a chart up there that says how much soil you lose, tons and tons a year. hear things twice. It just happens for me that way. You have to hear it more than once. Keep going to these meetings. If you meet somebody that gives you that one little tidbit of information, the rest of it's trivial, but that one little bit's going to help you along the way. I would say if there's any landowners here, if there's any advice I could give, basically this was for buildings or trees or groves or certain things. The one thing that's helped me a little bit along the way was I took photographs. I photographed things. And it has helped me with some property that was, shall we say, lifted. It's helped me with seeing buildings deteriorate. Back in the day, we had open corn cribs where whole corn cobs, the whole thing was stored. You know, and you see that go, so the chicken coop is gone, and the corn cribs are gone, and the hog house is gone now, because nobody lives on the farm. And last December, another gut-wrenching thing that happened was we tore down the house. Nobody lived there, the windows were falling out, the shingles were flying over the farm, and it's time to make those changes, and it hurts. It hurts. And those changes just keep coming and coming. And you have to keep up, and you have to change. And I remember the first time I saw those tractors with the Caterpillar wheels. I'm like, what are they doing now? Dad had a corn picker with the heat houser on it, and he'd come in late at night with corn, just eyes pussy, cold as all get out, breathing in that dust. And what they have now is so much better for them. And how many times I thought to myself, if Dad could see this. You know, I went to a milking barn where the cows walk in because they want to eat, and this laser scans them, and they get milked. Nobody's there. And so I guess I'm just saying, the farm is in our hearts, but we have to change too and keep up with things. So.
Well, thank you, Inez. And I think that certainly the stories of all four of our panelists both help us think about the family connections they have to the land and our history and our heritage and the significance of the decisions we make going forward. And so we've got about 20 minutes for questions. And if Matt's in the room or anybody wants to help, we'll circulate a microphone or two and see if we can get a little smoky fire up here. Who's got the first question? Yeah, all right, out here. There you go.
Sharecrop, outdated. Can you expand on that?
I think it's on. There you go.
Oh, it's on?
Yep.
Okay. The question was about my comment about it being outdated, but what was the question specifically?
Why you said that?
Why we said that? Well, because it is. Not too many people are using that anymore, or they're using something modified version. Ken talked about cultivating. One of the things is, a farmer used to have to cultivate 3 times, and that was a pretty good cost to him. One of the modifications of a 50-50 crop share is not really 50-50, but 50-50 with the exception that the farmer buys the herbicide, and that's $30 an acre. It's really not quite as fair a deal as it used to be, but in my case, when you get the tax break in the state of Iowa, not federal, but in the state of Iowa, why that evens it out. So it makes it a good deal for both, in my opinion, for both the farmer and the landowner. I hope I've been able to avoid using the word tenant here today. Friends of mine and I just really dislike that word tenant. It's something that really is outdated. Your partners really.
Did I use the word tenant?
What? We use it because it's the legal term.
Well, you know, I thought about rewriting all the leases. I'm the one that does the leases, and I update them each year and online and send them to the farmer, and I'm just too old and lazy to go back through there and say lessor and lessee all the way through.
Next question. All done? Y'all through? Want to go to a break? Back in the back. Ann Jorgensen, Benton County.
This is really a compliment. I want to thank you. Being a woman farmer in 50 years in this state, it's really nice to see the mix in the audience of women that are involved in agriculture, plus the panel. So I appreciate your input into that and making sure that it happens. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Other questions? Yes. Mike Delaney, you're giving Matt a workout. Hope he's got his pedometer on. Next question will be over here on this side, Joe. So,
Running back and forth. This may be a little hard to articulate. I'll do my best. I don't understand title. When you were talking earlier about water and corn, I don't understand how that title works. You remove water, you need water, but it's the right depth according to the town, the root temperature, all that kind of stuff is confusing to me. But the comment of the first speaker, I forget what's your first name?
Jack.
Jack was talking about putting in tile to improve water quality. And was rapid? I think it's rapid. And I have a farm on Raccoon River, and I listened to Dr. Compton talk about the Iowa plan. And he suggested that tiling is a good thing because of removing water, increasing water capacity in the soil so you get infiltration and less surface runoff. And I suppose that's what you're talking about. Instead of having water running off your fields, they're going into intakes that go through pipes, and so they're taking the less soil going off, less phosphorus going off, and better for water quality. Now, both of us have been talking about nitrogen a great deal for a long time. Understand that infiltrating water picks up a lot of nitrogen and shoots out the tile of the river. So nitrogen is here from phosphorus. To a large extent, phosphorus moves with the soil on the surface of the water. It struck me, it's complicated, sorry, but it struck me again, looking at the display out here, and that water refuses to go through that compacted Iowa State farm soil out here on the display. And that water goes shooting right through the prairie plug that you got out there in that tube. It strikes me that things have changed with regard to tiling because of compaction. If you have a lot of organic matter, as we're talking about, Dr. Hatfield was talking about, a lot of carbon, a lot of organic matter, a lot of, tilt, you're going to get infiltration. But if you lost that carbon, lost that tilt, lost the biology, and you got compacted, fine particle soil, like I got to tell you, I was putting some insect traps out in a prairie and in a cornfield a couple of days ago to see what kind of bugs are crawling around the soil. And Keith Summerville's going to take a look at that here at Drake University for me. I took a trowel out into a farm field in Greene County to dig a little hole for this insect trap. And I couldn't get that trowel into the soil. I just figured it was going to be like my garden soil. It was hard as rock. I got my tree spade and I'm hammering on that soil like it's concrete. And I think that has to do with the way we're doing agriculture. That compaction, that changing in tilth is resulting in this poor infiltration. So my simple question is this: do you see your tiling as being something that really helps with the water quality down there in the river in the ground?
You answered much of that yourself. It helps the water quality. It helps the runoff. I can't recall hearing any number of tons of runoff being huge, and it really is. And it affects our lakes, our streams, everything. Plus, just more erosion. Carol mentioned they're putting some land in the pollinator program. We're going to do the same thing this fall, and the primary reason is this is down southwest of Osceola, and you know, they've had so many 3 to 5 inch rains down there. We were starting to get some gullies, and the farmer was just taking all the good dirt and pushing it in the salt into the gullies every year, and he was getting tired of that, and so we're going to, you know, put it in the 10-year program and improve the soil. So, you know, it's lots of soil, it's nitrogen, water quality, both clarity and nitrogen, and all of those things. Back to your setting out your insect traps. How far into the field did you walk?
Not very far, it was like 20 feet.
So you were probably walking in at the gate and maybe walking in 30 feet or whatever, and so you were probably doing that right where the farmer turned his tractor and equipment about 20 times through the year and compacted it pretty badly, and you haven't had rain up in Greene County for much this year, so you're kind of like our home garden, you know, it's hard to get even a trowel and dig a dandelion out.
I think you're right.
There's another question right behind you, Matt. He's saving you some steps.
Thank you guys for being here. My question isn't necessary for me, but for maybe some of my young counterparts that are just trying to get into farming. Can you tell or explain what young farmers trying to get land leased should do or try to do to make themselves more attractive to people like you?
We'll do this as a lightning round. Everybody can answer that question. Jack, you want to start, or Charles, you've got the mic?
Oh, I didn't mean
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, you know, that's difficult to get started in this business today. I mean, with land prices what they are, so it leaves them the option of trying to rent ground. And I just heard a young man back here a while ago said he spent $4 million on machinery to farm the farm. These are things that are difficult today unless you have someone like maybe Jack or myself or one of these ladies that will come along and say, you know, he's a good young man, I have the equipment, why don't we take him in and see if we can't get him started in this business? Because, you know, a few years ago I spent time down in Fort Myers, Florida in one of these seminars, and it was really eye-opening because my wife and I happened to sit in the back of the room in case we didn't like it, we could leave. But the fact is, we learned a lot down there that day. And as we looked around the room at all the gray hair, and that seminar was about planning and how many people had a plan. And you could have counted the people on one hand that had a plan, what becomes of that farm in the future? Who's going to run that farm? So I think it is in our job here as the older generation to try and help these young people, because it's almost impossible to do on their own. And I'm hoping that everyone here maybe feels the same, but somebody has to help.
From my perspective, looking for a tenant, it is their philosophy too. I want somebody that shares our vision for what we want our farm to be, how we want it managed and farmed. So when we did the RFP for our Clear Lake farm, I was hoping to get a young farmer. We had about, I can't remember, 6 or 8 different people respond. The farmer was fairly young. I think he was young, he was 40. But he wasn't a beginning farmer, which is what I would have liked. But the gentleman that we ended up hiring he was enthusiastic, he was committed, we shared the same philosophy. So for me, that's what I'm looking for. In the cattle, our Osceola farm and our cattle, we do have a younger farmer, but he also is a more progressive, willing to try new practices, was already doing some of those things on some of his other farms too. So for me, hiring anyone, I want somebody that shares my goals.
Jack, what's your answer?
What I would do is get that young person, tell her or him to get 2 or 3 strengths would be even better. And I put at the top of the list education in agriculture. Not that they have to have a PhD in agronomy, but to at least get some education, whether it's at the local junior college or whatever. And then again, help them to be able to articulate their desires and wants to the person. The 2 young farmers we're helping are as different as night and day. One of them couldn't have it better. He's a 3rd generation farmer. He's a great kid. Excuse me, he's a great young man. He's 25 years old. And he's going to do well. The other farmer is more like I was. He's a town kid. And he's very fortunate that he did what some people helped him, like Ken said. Two brothers who had sons but didn't want to farm, took this young man in, and right now he's working a day job and farming on the weekends and learning from them, and it's working out really, really well for them.
And Inez, we'll let you have the last word because we'll take a break and move to our next panel after you're done so they can make a shift. But tell us what you're looking for in a young farmer.
Well, sometimes it's hard to get a young farmer. I know that the renter that we have right now has sons, and so I've seen them out working on the farm, and I know they're getting experience to take over when Dad's not there. Dad's name's on the lease, but I know that those boys are getting their experience and their backup and learning about farming from their dad.
Would you encourage their dad to tell his sons to come meet you so that you could begin a conversation with them?
Oh, I'd talk to anybody. Sure. Sure. Communication is great, and you have to have that communication going on.
Well, let's thank our landowner